Thank you, Joe. Our final speaker today. Our final speaker today is Mr. Matt Vill, speaking on rebellion, and so I give you the assiduous, down-to-earth, and modest Matt Vill.
I am wearing white socks. Yes, here at Providence Academy, I have dared to don the wrong color socks. In fact, I have been doing so every day this entire year. Now I know your teachers with their speech evaluators are thinking, white socks are not proper dress. This kid is going down. And of course, I'm sure Mr. Sorkin is already somewhere tallying up how many detentions not in uniform every single day would be. 9 detentions. But guess what? I'm not afraid of you people. I have put up with you tyrants of formal attire for 6 long years, and up until now, I have put up with your oppressions, but I will stand for it no longer. I hold that I have a right to put whatever color socks I choose on my feet. This right I take very seriously. I have ended up in a handful of detentions for it this year, and am even now possibly sacrificing my own senior speech, assuming that white socks merit to fail. But I assure you, this right is worth sacrificing. This right has become more important to me than a couple hours of attention after school, or even my own senior speech, or even the chance of having to re-give my senior speech to a board of oppressors. And not just doing this for myself. And it has nothing to do with the fact that I lost most of my white socks, tan socks, over the course of last year. I really am doing it for the rest of you seniors who have been oppressed in the same way. To liberate us all from the clutches of those who would put white or tan or tall white socks on our feet. So we have all put up with this long enough, and we really are ready for change. It is time to heed the words of Bob Marley and get up, and stand up for our rights. Now, many of you are probably thinking that I lost my mind around the end of my second sentence. And any of you that made it past that certainly thought so after I quoted Bob Marley. Now, even though I may not have been entirely serious through most of what I have said so far, Bob and I really are trying to make a point. The point that I'll be trying to convince you of over the course of my speech is that rebellion has and always will be a necessary good in every culture. I will try to give you a much clearer view of what rebellion truly is, and to remove the image of a rebel just being a kid in all black clothes with lots of teen angst. And possibly convince some of you that it isn't the end of the world to have a senior break the rules by doing things such as bringing a grill into lunch. First, you have to understand the philosophy of rebellion. To understand it, I will break down the rebellion you just witnessed me make. The first and most important thing I said was, I will stand for this no longer. For a rebel to truly be a rebel, he must have at one time accepted his oppression, but then draw a line where he will accept it no longer. According to the philosopher Albert Camus, he is basically saying, up to this point yes, beyond it no. This may seem trivial to any of us here, but in a world where relativism is beginning to dominate, and what is right and true for one person is not for another person, a rebel is doing much more than he appears to be. By drawing this line, he is saying there is something governing both the oppressor and himself. Which leads me to the second part of my earlier rebellion, when I said, I hold that I have a right to put whatever color socks I choose on my feet. The rebel in this example is claiming to have rights that are above any power the oppressor has over him. It is clear that he does not think he gets these rights from his oppressor, but from somewhere higher. By rebelling, one is simultaneously asserting that men have rights that no men can take away. I believe our rebellious forefathers called these certain unalienable rights. Once a rebel has established the rights he believes have been infringed upon, he makes the next step in rebellion. This step happened in my example when I said, this right has become more important to me than a few hours of detention. This is the part that allows rebels to make amazing sacrifices for their cause. For they take the rights that at one time were no more important than any other right and raise them up to be the most important thing imaginable. Before my rebellion, I would have avoided getting out of uniform at the expense of my right to choose my socks. However, after the rebellion, the right to choose my socks has become more important than the rights that have a much larger bearing on my life. Once this right has reached a certain amount of importance, the final part of rebellion takes place. This part happened in my example when I said, I really am doing it for the rest of you seniors, who have been oppressed in the same way. This right has become so important to me that I now feel it necessary to bring it to my peers. This is an essential part of rebellion, because without it, there would have been no revolutions. Think back to when we studied the French Revolution. How did the unrest of a small part of a small city in the middle of France, Paris, spread to become the French Revolution? Certainly, it could not have happened without these rebels rallying citizens who had in no way rebelled yet to their cause. Without this rallying, rebellions would rarely make a difference in the world. Hopefully now your understanding of a rebel has improved somewhat past the aforementioned child in black with lots of teen angst. With all this in mind, I will now try to explain to you how essential rebellion has been in history. First, I want you to think of how many times you've heard the word revolution or rebellion in your history classes. For example, the Roman slave rebellion, Spartacus, the Peasants' War, the Glorious Revolution, the Jacobite risings, the Pontiac's Rebellion, the American Revolution, the French Revolution, 1848 revolutions, the October Revolution, the Iranian Revolution, the agricultural, scientific, or industrial revolutions, to name a few you may have heard. Think about how different things would have been if just one of these revolutions did not happen. An example of this is Daniel Shea. Most of you should have heard of Daniel Shea when we learned about Shays' Rebellion in Mr. LaPelle's history class. Shays' Rebellion was when a group of angry farmers marched around taking over the debtors' courts that they owed money to. The American government at that time was almost completely powerless to defend itself, and Shea was only defeated by a privately funded militia. In the end, Shays' Rebellion was a complete failure in its original goal, but it led to something far more important than the death of a few farmers. This rebellion showed the incompetence of the government under the Articles of Confederation, and eventually led to the Constitution of the United States. Without rebels like Daniel Shea, we most likely would live in a much different America. Hopefully now you understand how necessary rebellion has been throughout history. However, if you are still not convinced, I do have authoritative source number 3 to back me up. The wise Thomas Jefferson once said, "A little rebellion now and then is a good thing. It is a medicine necessary for sound health of government. God forbid that we should ever go 20 years without such a rebellion." Now hopefully we are to the point where you are thinking, so what does this have to do with me? After all, this is a very good question. What possibly could Americans have to rebel about today?